Um, and then another thing that I'll mention is that low and middle income tenants in New York City have more access to tenants attorneys than ever before, thanks to the Right to Counsel who put together this document. If you need attorney or help with tenant organizing groups, you can click on this link, Eviction Free NYC, right here, and that page will bring you to a list of resources that can help you. The eviction moratorium, like I mentioned, that's currently in place. People may have questions about it. You can go to this link, and also feel free to ask me questions after this. I may be able to help you. So now we're going to get into how to organize your building. Oh wow, sorry, I've been talking for a long time. So I'll try to go through this quickly and then open it up for a Q&A. So the first thing that you want to do is get to know your neighbors. This is obviously hard with social distancing. You can slip flyers under doors. I know people who have just maybe posted like a really simple sheet, maybe make a Google email for your building and then post a flyer, which there exists a template in this toolkit to build up, but maybe post that on your front door or in public places, maybe on every floor in your building, to have people email you and just sort of build up a list of contact information. But really what you want is, you want a list or a WhatsApp group for the whole building to be able to stay in touch with each other. Those are the sort of first few steps. And then you want to come together and have a call to action. So the first thing we're asking people to do is sign our petition to the governor, asking him to cancel rent and meet the other demands that we've set forth. And then you also want to draft a letter to your landlord, informing your landlord of the group's decision to go on rent strike, and asking them to cancel rent in light of the coronavirus pandemic that we have. So then you want to get that agreement. There's again a sample flyer a little bit later in the toolkit that people can look at when we're off this call. And again, it's usually much easier to knock on doors in a building right now. People may be skeptical of doing that. I know that there are people in buildings who are still doing it and just trying to respect social distancing when knocking on doors. I think it sort of depends on everyone's situation. And then you're going to send that letter to the landlord with those demands. At the same time, again, you want to make the rent strike public, because it's really important that we're not doing this for specific apartments or even specific buildings, but we want to make this public so that it's a demand to cancel rent statewide, like we've been saying. And then you can use the rent strike tracking sheet in this toolkit to sort of keep track of different apartments in your building, who's on board, who's skeptical, who wants to do it, but they feel like they owe the landlord something. It's important to track that, to track the status of different buildings or different units in your building. And then you just want to document everything you're doing and make sure that you have support. So this form that we have right here, number A, you can share your story on a story map. I encourage everyone to look at it. It's really incredible to see people's stories statewide of their inability to pay rent and how they're organizing for this rent strike. And then you can text rent strike to this number to get updates. And then people in New York City can also call Met Council's housing hotline. The times are posted, the times and the number are posted there if you have specific questions. And then there's some other resources I can give at the end to sort of help people as they're working through building their tenants union and sort of going through all of the necessary steps for a rent strike. Okay, so there's a lot more in this document, but I've been speaking for a long time and I'm sure people have a lot of questions. So with that, maybe we can open it up to questions, and if there's something I left out, maybe someone can let me know and we can address it here.
I just want to start by saying that everything that we've been looking at is on that link that we posted several times on the chat. So for everyone that maybe joined in later, you can just go to that link on the chat, and everything that Mike just shared with us, it's all there. So all those links, all of those numbers, they're all there.
So I also will mention DSA, our housing working group, has been doing, there's 3 weekly calls. They're at Tuesday at 9 a.m., Thursday at 9 p.m., and Saturday at noon. And they're just weekly Zoom calls for people who are in any stage of organizing their building, or any stage of this rent strike, to sort of call in and just ask questions, whether it's, help with strategy for building up your association, working through responses you get from your landlord, maybe legal questions. So I can drop that information in the chat as well. So they're asking people to fill out this survey just so you get like the reminder, and then I'll drop the Zoom information too. So really, you don't have to be in any stage of the rent strike. If you just have questions and want to log on, feel free. They've been really interesting and super helpful. And then another thing is, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is having a town hall tonight at 6 with Housing Justice for All. So I just dropped the event link in the chat. So that's going to be really interesting. It's super exciting that we have, a Congress member fighting for us and interested in this. So I think it's going to be very eye-opening, and hopefully she has some good news on, bills she's trying to introduce, and things like that.
If there's any questions for everyone, you can all, yeah, Joshan? Yes.
Hi. Okay, a couple quick ones. So basically, I mean, this could also be on the Zoom call, but how do you make the letter public? How do you recommend making the letter public? And then also, how many tenants do you think it's important to have in order to launch a tenants association?
Those are both really good questions. So the first is, I would definitely follow Housing Justice for All on any like social media platforms you use. They are constantly putting out information that would be helpful for this. There are forms that buildings are able to fill out. I think some of them are in the toolkit that will get, just to make sure that your building is sort of on the coalition's radar. Joining the DSA calls weekly too, we definitely would be able to, if you're ready to make it public and you think you have enough people signed on. To answer your second question, there's no minimum for a tenants association. Two apartments in a building can start a tenants association, and then you are a tenants association. So obviously it's best for the majority of apartments in a building to be signed on or to be officially part of the TA, but there's no minimum for it to be legitimate. And even for a rent strike, it's obviously better for more apartments to have it, but even if just a few units in a building are calling for a rent strike and putting pressure on the landlord, especially publicly, I think that is still really powerful and still really challenges this power dynamic that we've been talking about.
And lastly, so each person that is on board as part of the tenants association should be signing the letter or not?
That's a good question. No, I think it's best to communicate as a group. So you're communicating as 100 Main Streets Tenants Association. You don't want the landlord necessarily to know who is on board, because the other thing is, and I think I maybe mentioned this, but what landlords will do will, they'll get that letter maybe from the tenants association and then try to say, I don't want to deal with this. I want to work with people on a case by case basis. And that's exactly what we don't want to happen. We want to negotiate everything as a collective group, and put our demands forth as a collective group, so that not only to scare the landlord, but also just to show again that there's power in a collective, and sort of not let a landlord get away with trying to break up the association, the tenants association that you have in the building.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Conrad, you had a question, I think. Conrad Thomas.
Joe Shane I pretty much asked the same question. I was wondering, like, what's the critical mass that might need to be achieved in order to sort of, I know it's a pretty impossible question, but do you have any kind of an idea percentage wise of what critical mass would need to be hit of people not paying in order to elicit action from Cuomo?
That's a good question. There's definitely no magic number.
Yeah.
He's definitely already feeling the pressure too. I mean, he's doing a bad job at dodging the question. He certainly is dodging the question, and he certainly has not come up with even preliminary feelers for solutions. Really, all he's mentioned substantively was that rent freeze I mentioned. And just to sort of get in the weeds a little bit, the rent freeze that our mayor, Bill de Blasio, and the governor quickly or shortly has mentioned, only applies for rent stabilized tenants, and it would apply, from what I understand currently, for new leases starting in October. So this process that the mayor is talking about with the rent freeze really doesn't help people right now. Like, freezing rents for my lease that gets renewed next year is like, my rent not going up in a year has nothing to do with my inability to pay rent on May 1st.
Right now, yeah.
So I think it's important also when you see, de Blasio talking about this rent freeze, that, journalists and people in places where they can question that or ask him directly, that they follow up and say, can you get a little bit deeper into that? Because from what I understand, the process through the rent guidelines board increase is what I just mentioned. So again, it's just, it is not a solution to our current crisis.
Right, and then one other question in terms of circulating this message, like information about a potential rent strike. I didn't pay rent last month, and I'm kind of on the fence about doing it this month, because if I did it this month, it would be a half and half kind of deal, meeting the landlord halfway, I guess. I'd rather not, obviously, because I'd like to see some change. But in terms of publicizing the message, I mean, I've seen a bunch of sort of like independent ad hoc spreadings of this message, I guess. And I haven't seen any sort of like a resource. There's like no sort of central axis upon which all of this is being thrown. Is that where you guys see yourself as being that central axis, or?
So I guess there's different ways to answer that question, but Housing Justice for All will be and has been publishing specific buildings that they are making public that this building is on rent strike. So there are definitely buildings that Housing Justice for All has taken as publishing as these buildings are on rent strike. I definitely, if you're in the early stage, we can maybe talk offline, or I would recommend that you maybe join one of the DSA calls I dropped into the chat, because we can get you set up with, being on our list, like you were mentioning, and not only having a person that one-on-one is working with you through all the issues you may have, but also, publishing and publicizing, I guess is the word I'm looking for, your building's rent strike. The other thing you can do is, post things in windows. A lot of people are dropping banners or sheets that say, cancel rent Cuomo, or this building's on rent strike. I live on like a pretty busy, visible street. So, having these sheets dropped in places that a lot of people can see them is also really important, just for the public in general to see that this is happening. And, just yesterday, I think in the New York Times, there was a whole, I think it was in the magazine, this whole story with illustrations of a handful of people that are organizing their buildings and people who are striking. So I think there's a few different ways, but if you are looking for direct support and have questions and maybe want your building to be or your tenants association to have their strike be public, definitely feel free to join one of those calls, or you can email me, and I can get you connected with the people that can make your demands more public.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you for putting all this together. Much appreciated.
I have one question. My sister is a subletter and she's recently unemployed. Her roommates are trying to push her into paying rent that she obviously doesn't have. So she reached out to her landlord, and her landlord gave her like a 2-week deadline. And from my understanding, that's like a no-no, right? Like he's just supposed to say, don't worry about it, right? Like, am I wrong? Or like, what are her legal rights?
So landlords are still allowed to demand rent is paid, right? Especially for people, maybe your sister isn't on a lease, but the person she's subletting from is. Landlord, rents are not canceled in any way right now. So with that said, people cannot be evicted. So even if your sister or the person she's subletting from or her current roommates say we're not paying rent, your landlord obviously won't be happy about that, but there's nothing they can do to initiate an eviction right now. But that's also a really good example. So many people, especially our age, our generation, live with roommates, and it just, this whole situation is so complicated by roommates and people who may not be on the lease and people who may have lost their job while their roommates haven't, and it just is a really good example of why we need rent canceled for everyone across the board and not just for certain people. Because, if your sister's subletting and a program passes where you have to prove that you're on the lease to get relief and things like that, there shouldn't be people like your sister who slip through the cracks. It's totally unacceptable. So that's why we're pushing for this big collective universal cancellation of rent. But also, yes, your sister cannot be evicted. Your landlord can say you have to pay rent or whatever, but they
can't do it.
Not on the lease.
Period. Another thing, do you have any additional tips if your building, meaning my building, has been particularly quiet around this issue? One of my neighbors sent out a mutual aid form, slipped it under everyone's door. And then I texted him and I was like, are you paying rent? And he was like, this is actually why I made this form. And then we just never talked about it again. Do you have any tips on how I can start a conversation? I don't know what else I can.
So I think even just having that connection with that one other apartment is really helpful and really vital right now. So I would maybe start by reaching out to that other apartment and say, you know, you can send this toolkit and you can send maybe some other resources and say, hey, I really think that we should get more serious about this.
Mhm.
And I think that we should do more follow-up. It may be that, you know, you said that he put the mutual aid form, but it didn't maybe address a rent strike fully. Maybe putting flyers under people's door that are more explicit about this. I'm assuming that there will be people who react differently to the cancellation, a rent cancellation demand or petition or you know, discussion. You know, I think people will maybe react differently than they would for a mutual aid um,
Yeah.
collective in your building. So I would start with them because, you know, that person also may have one or two contacts of other people in your building who may have other contacts of other people. So I think, you know, even if you start with one other tenant in a different apartment, that's a really good first step. And then it can definitely grow from there. But again, you know, maybe it's good to post publicly, post flyers,
Mhm.
slide under people's doors. If you really want to like put on face masks and knock on some doors through really explicit and intentional social distancing, that could be possible as well.
Mhm. Okay. Cool. Thank you. And thank you again for being here.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for joining.
What are the biggest consolidated public actions that are happening on Friday that everyone can participate in?
Yes, that's a good question. Again, I would just plug Housing Justice for All on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. This week, there's a lot going on, and you know, there's a lot of new information being published, and there's a huge, you know, sort of unprecedented push from Housing Justice for All and 70 member organizations that are a part of that. So I think, you know, staying up to date on their social media on what's going on will definitely help. And then organizations that are part of that coalition also maybe have specific, um, you know, events and actions and things that are more tailored to their membership. So, you know, if you have you know, a South Bronx based tenants group, maybe they have an action that's more tailored for their specific neighborhoods than, you know, maybe a group that reaches tenants citywide. So I definitely would start by just poking around Housing Justice for All social media stuff, DSA's housing, social media as well. I think that things are changing so much, especially this week because rent is due on Friday. Those are maybe the best places to get the most recent and up-to-date information on different actions that are happening this week.
I mean, I've been posting a lot of stuff all along, and I'm just even, you know, asking people to DM me if they wanted the link for tonight and stuff like that, and I'm just not getting response. So I'm just hoping that there's some larger, concerted, really visible effort, you know, not just all these different groups doing their thing, you know, like if there were, you know, if we weren't in quarantine, it would be taking to the streets. Like, what's the equivalent to that kind of visible, consolidated moment? Is there one?
Yeah, there is definitely one that is still being planned for May 1st, this Friday. So again, I would follow Housing Justice for All, and they will make the sort of big actions that we're planning known. But, you know, it is hard, you know, you're right. We would be in the streets. We would be in Albany. We would be, you know, doing marches, but we can't right now. So we definitely are adapting, but it is definitely a different landscape than it was just a few months ago, or than it was when we were fighting for the rent laws back in 2019.
Yeah, we just need to be counted. There's got to be some way for numbers to be counted. Thank you.
So if there's no other question, Chris, did you have a question? I see you unmuted.
Yeah, this is a quick one. So hey, Mike, thanks for doing all this. Just a quick question on the section you have in this link. What can we do in addition to coordinating a rent strike? I just want to know about how much we should prioritize that, especially before May 1st. And as you give us the instructions here to call and who to call based on Bill and on Governor Cuomo, those two different scripts, how often can we call or should we call that? And how much pressure does that add to call more?
That's a really good question. You should call as often and as much as you can. If you should call your state senator, your state assembly person. Obviously, the governor is the big priority. But the more calls they have, even if it's just from you, Chris, calling every day, it's really important to build that pressure. So there is no limit to the number of times you can call. The level to which you can annoy Cuomo. Yeah, I mean, calling Cuomo primarily, but your other elected officials as much as possible is really important. And then what was your first question again? What page are you referencing?
I don't know. I feel like I got a different link than the PDF that you had up there earlier, but it just says it's like a Google Doc, and then the bottom it says, "What can we do in addition to coordinating rent strike?" Towards the bottom, I guess.
Okay. What does it mention? Sorry, I'm not entirely sure what doc.
Just NYC. The first bullet is NYC cancel rent. You can pressure Governor Cuomo to cancel all rent utilities to alleviate the looming financial burdens. And then phone numbers to call, and then a script. And then the second bullet is urge your representative to support NY State Senate Bill S8125, and the script for that as well.
Yeah. That's good. Gianaris's bill is like one of the pieces that would be required to cancel rent. It doesn't go all the way there because his bill is only for people that have been impacted and who can prove that they were impacted by rent. And it also doesn't really get to Sari's question of roommates and people who aren't on the lease and people who are maybe undocumented. So it is obviously a helpful bill, but it is just one of a piece of a larger project. But yeah, I mean, the other thing about these like scripts calling your elected officials, it doesn't have to be formal. If you just call and say, hey, you're my senator, hey, you're my governor, we need to cancel rent. We need to cancel it now. I can't pay rent. I don't want to be homeless. You need to cancel rent now. I think that is totally acceptable. You don't have to be formal about it. You can definitely push for the Gianaris bill. I think that will get the point across. Obviously Cuomo is going to use his executive power to do what he wants right now. But that's why we need to sort of change the conversation and have as many people as possible demanding things from him, not only by calling, but by making their rent strikes public.
So you're saying that we could call in support of the Senator Gianaris's bill, but also extend our own part off that and say it doesn't go far enough, and to repeat what you just said about subletters and so on.
Yes, as a DSA member, I would say that. Yeah.
Thank you. I said thank you to you, but also thank you to 8-Ball.
Yeah, thank you, 8-Ball. This is great.
Thank you so much for taking your time with us today.
Yeah, thanks for hosting.